Hey guys, it's TheFrXion here, Tank12, however you want to call me, I don't really care. And today, the Thunderbolt, the Tier 6 American medium tank, another M4 Sherman, is in the Advent calendar. It's the 7th of December, and I think I've never uploaded 2 videos on one day, which is quite a feat for my channel actually. If you have been a subscriber for longer than a few, like let's say a few months, you probably would have noticed that, well, this channel is not very active with uploads, but that has kind of changed in the last few weeks. And so yeah, we're taking a look at this vehicle and what's so special about this tank. Why should you pick it up? Well, first and foremost, it's very similar to the Fury. We can put that out right now. The Fury was on sale a few days ago, and if you already have picked up the Fury, I don't really see a point of you picking up the Thunderbolt, only if you really are a huge fan of every Sherman tank and if you are like a big tank collector. Because this tank, in my opinion, right now is just, well, it's a nice little Sherman. It certainly is very similar to the Fury, maybe a little bit better. But other than that, it's the Sherman that we all know and love, like the EZ8, if you have played that. So what's so special about this tank? Well, this tank does have, in direct comparison to the EZ8, it does have stronger frontal armor and a little bit better side turret armor and frontal turret armor. So it does have a little bit more survivability. And it's a very nice looking model. That's the very first thing I will say, and the very first thing you'll notice when you're taking a look at this tank. Wargaming, as always with their premium tanks, have paid a lot of attention to detail. You have the 30 cal, the 50 cal, then you have the helmets on this tank, like on the outside, and you have like the tracks, part of the tracks, you know, the wheels for the tracks. Inside and outside, and you have some little cases in the back. So very nice, intricate little details that just make this tank a little bit more lively, you know, a little bit more special. So what are we going to compare this vehicle to? We're going to compare this tank to 4 or 3 other Sherman variants. I have to check real fast that the Easy E2 is fully upgraded, because it would be unfair if it's not. So, what is also special about the Thunderbolt VII is that this tank, like in this setup, was the command vehicle of Lieutenant Colonel Abrams. You probably have known or have heard of this man. He was a commander of armored brigade. I'm not entirely sure what the name was of his unit, but he was the commanding officer of one of the tank companies in Western Europe during 1944. We can check this real fast. Of the 37th Tank Battalion, and he became very famous later on during the Korean War, where he was the rank of a general, I think. No, he was rank of general during the Vietnam War. So he was a very, very famous American general or officer up until the point of general during World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War. And you guys probably know him best if you're tank fanatics, tank fans, by the honoring of his name and his personality with the M4A3E8 Abrams, the current American main battle tank, which has already been around for 30 years now. I think 37 years. In the 80s, that tank was released. The first versions of that tank were produced, and they have been very, very successful in their lifespan. Say what you want to say about the Iraq War, they have proven their worth during Operation Iraqi Freedom, and yeah, that is definitely a name that is very, very infamous. So yeah, that's just a little bit background information to this tank and who was actually sitting inside of it. So, moving on, let's go over to the comparison. Now, if you just take a look at the standard numbers right here for points, they are very similar all over the board because they're all Shermans just with different variants, you know. The very first thing you'll notice is that the firepower on all the tanks with their main armament is the same because they're all running the same gun. They're all running the same, you know, the same pen, the same damage. Just a slight difference, the Thunderbolt does not have the same rate of fire as the other three tanks. Thus the reload time is a little bit worse, but that doesn't really hinder this tank so much because all the other statistics are the same. Your DPM is just a little bit lower. Survivability wise, the Thunderbolt and the M4A3E8, or the Jumbo, as people like to call it back in the days, are the best armored vehicles regarding their statistics. You have 123 millimeters in the front, on the front with the Thunderbolt. That is 22 millimeters more than the E2, but at the same time you are lacking the 76 millimeter side armor. Turret wise, all the tanks are the same, but that 123 millimeters of frontal armor is a very nice amount of number if you're going up against other tier 6 tanks, because it's also fairly nicely angled, so that gives you some additional protection. Now if we move on from firepower and survivability to mobility, it's one of those Shermans that certainly is not the slowest versions. If you compare it to the E2, the Jumbo is obviously slower than this vehicle. Because, well, I'm not entirely sure why the Jumbo is slower. It does have better specific horsepower per ton. It does have a much better engine, or a little bit a better engine. It does way less, but it still only goes 35 kilometers per hour forward and 15 kilometers per hour backwards. So the Thunderbolt is actually faster than the E2 and faster than the Fury with the 42 kilometers forward, although it's just 0.2 kilometers faster than the Fury. But at the same time, it's kind of faster. It's almost as fast as the Easy 8. Traverse speed is the best on the Fury, but all the other are very similar except for the for the Jumbo. The Jumbo has a turret traverse speed or track traverse speed of 33.38, thus reducing quite a lot of that mobility that you actually have on the other vehicles. Concealment wise, obviously is the best on this tank since I do have it equipped right now with the best kind of crew that I have, or a good kind of crew. And also pretty damn good view range of 472 meters with the addition of binos. If we take away the binos, it's 378 meters view range. So yeah, those are pretty much the statistics. Nothing too special. It's very similar to the Fury. It's very similar to the other Shermans. Slight differences, which actually can make a bit of a change and an impact on the game, especially the frontal armor. And we'll see how well this tank actually will perform in battle.